They dragged her through the dust of Gila Bend's main street, iron shackles biting into her wrists, while every man on the saloon porch laughed like it was a show put on for their amusement. Sarah Blackwood didn't cry, didn't beg. Those green eyes, sharp as desert sage, held only fury and the haunted look of someone who'd been running too long. Sheriff Davis yanked her chain harder than necessary, his voice carrying across the street. Caught her sneaking around the general store. Crazy thing is, she never took a damn thing. The men's laughter grew crueler. Should have left her where we found her, half starved and half crazy. I watched from the shadow of the livery, the weight of my cavalry rifle familiar against my shoulder. I hadn't planned on trouble when I rode into this dusty corner of Arizona territory. Hadn't planned on standing against an entire town for a stranger in chains. But when the sheriff mentioned her two small children, locked away in a cave while their mother desperately searched for food, something in me shifted, something that had been dead since Tennessee. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Dawn broke reluctantly over Gila Bend, Arizona territory, the summer of 1878. Heat shimmered above the dusty main street before the sun had fully risen, promising another merciless day. I leaned against the weathered wall of the livery stable, trail dust still clinging to my clothes after 3 days of hard riding south from Denver. I'd come looking for land, not trouble. My brother Thomas had written about cattle opportunities in these parts before the fever took him last spring. His last letter remained folded in my breast pocket, paper worn thin at the creases from repeated reading. At 35, I was too old for foolishness, but not yet ready to surrender the dream we'd shared. The commotion started near the jailhouse, men gathering, passing a bottle despite the early hour. Sheriff Davis emerged, dragging a woman in iron shackles. Her dark hair hung in tangles around a face too pale for the desert, skin burned and peeling across sharp cheekbones. Her dress had once been blue calico, now faded to ash. But it was her eyes that caught me, green as summer sage and filled with such fury that even from a distance I felt their heat. "Found her sneaking around the back of Whitaker's store," Davis announced, yanking her chain so hard she stumbled. "Crazy thing is, she wasn't stealing nothing, just standing there, staring at the shelves through the window. Bet she was casing the place," someone shouted. "Should have left her where they found her," another added, "out by Devil's Canyon, half-starved and talking crazy." I'd intended to mind my own business. This wasn't my town. These weren't my people. But something in the way she held herself, spine straight despite the chains, made me push off the wall and step into the street. Dust swirled around my boots as the crowd parted slightly. "What's her name?" I asked, my voice steady, though my heart wasn't. Sheriff Davis squinted at me. "Calls herself Sarah Blackwood. No papers, no family we can find. Just her and 2 little ones she says she left behind." He gave a sharp laugh. "Probably dead by now." At that, Sarah's head snapped up. "They're not dead." I studied her then, the cracked lips, the wary stance, the way her gaze constantly swept the surroundings. "Where are your children?" She measured me before answering, like she was deciding if I was another threat. "A cave. 5 miles northeast. I locked them in with our last water. I had to find food." "Jesus," someone muttered. "She's plumb crazy." "She's dangerous," another added. I stepped forward, reaching for the chain between her wrists. "Unlock it." Davis blinked, surprised. "What in tarnation are you doing?" "Montgomery." I said, "Unlock it." My voice went flat, the way it used to when I gave orders during the war. The sheriff hesitated, then produced a key from his belt. The shackles dropped with a heavy clink into the dust. I turned to the crowd, all grinning now, expecting some joke. She's not a prisoner anymore. Their laughter came fast and mean. Hell, you buying yourself a wife? Montgomery? That what you come to Arizona for? I looked at Sarah, then back at the men. Laugh all you want, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet street. She's mine now. My camp lay beside a small creek, 2 miles outside town, just a lean-to shelter, fire pit, and my pack of meager provisions. I'd been planning to move on once I'd learned what I needed about available land. Those plans had changed the moment I helped Sarah onto my horse and rode out of Gila Bend with the sound of laughter fading behind us. The cave was exactly where she said it would be, tucked into red rock, inside. 2 small children emerged cautiously, Emma, about 7, and Noah, perhaps 5, both pale as milk, eyes wide with fear. Their reunion with their mother brought a tightness to my throat I hadn't felt in years. Now they sat by my campfire, the children watching my every move as I stirred rabbit stew. When I handed them bowls, they ate with the focused intensity of those who've known true hunger. You were in the war, Sarah said eventually, watching me over her coffee cup. Not a question. I nodded. Union cavalry, Tennessee mostly. I thought so, the way you stand, the way you spoke to that sheriff. And you, I asked, what brings a woman and 2 small children to hide in a cave in Arizona territory? She glanced at her children, now drowsing beside the fire, before answering. My husband died 6 months ago, typhoid. I'm sorry, I said, because it seemed expected. Don't be. He wasn't a kind man. Her voice was flat. After he died, we lost the farm. His brother said I could stay if I accommodated him. The disgust in her expression told me enough. I refused. We took a wagon train west. It was fine until Colorado. The leader, he started watching Emma, said she was developing nicely for her age. The cold anger that rose in me must have shown on my face. Sarah nodded slightly, acknowledging my understanding. I've learned that men with badges aren't always better than men without them, she added quietly. We sat in silence as the fire crackled, sending sparks toward the star-strewn sky. I have a small ranch, I said finally, about 20 miles north of here. Nothing fancy, 2 rooms and a lean-to stable, but there's clean water and good grazing land. You and the children could stay there, just until you figure out where you're headed next. Sarah's eyes narrowed. And what would you expect in return? Mr. Montgomery? Hope, I corrected. And nothing. I'd sleep in the stable. She laughed then, a short, disbelieving sound. Men always want something. I'm not other men. That's what they all say, too. I nodded, acknowledging her point. Fair enough, but my offer stands. Food, shelter, safety, no strings attached. She studied me for a long time, the firelight casting shadows across her face. We'll see if your word means anything, she said finally. We'll come to your ranch, for now. I smiled slightly. For now. The journey next day took us through sun-baked terrain. Emma rode with me, initially stiff with tension, but gradually relaxing enough to ask questions. What's that bird called? She asked, pointing to a red-tailed hawk. That's a hawk. They have the best eyes of any creature in the desert. Like Mama, Emma said solemnly. She sees everything. Your mama seems like a smart woman. Emma nodded. She says we have to be smart and careful because the world isn't kind to people like us. What kind is that? People without a man to protect them. She tilted her head. Are you going to protect us, Mr. Hope? The question caught me off guard. I'll do my best. That's what Papa said, too. But he didn't. We settled into a cautious routine at my ranch. Sarah insisted on cooking, using stored beans and cornmeal to create simple but filling meals. The children remained watchful, but began to show small signs of relaxing, Emma exploring the yard. Noah silently trailing after me as I tended the animals. Each evening, Sarah would stand on the porch, arms wrapped around herself as she stared into the gathering darkness. On the third night, I joined her, careful to keep a respectful distance. Children asleep? I asked. She nodded. They're exhausted. It's been a long journey. For you too, I imagine. She didn't respond, just kept scanning the horizon as shadows lengthened across the scrubby land. After a moment, she said, I should warn you. My husband's brother, James Blackwood, he's not the type to let things go. If he's looking for us, let him look, I said. Arizona's a big territory. Sarah turned to me then, her face half in shadow. You don't understand. James has connections, money, and he's... She hesitated. He's not right in the head. The things he wanted to do to me, to Emma... She shuddered. He won't find you here, and if he does, he'll have to go through me first. She studied me in the fading light. You're either the most decent man I've ever met, or the most foolish. Probably both, I admitted. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Good night, Mr. Montgomery. Hope, I corrected automatically. This time, the smile reached her eyes. Hope, she repeated, before turning inside. That night, I lay awake in the barn loft, thinking about her warnings. Something about Sarah's story didn't quite add up. The fear was genuine. I'd seen that in her vigilant behavior, the way she positioned herself between her children and the door. But there were gaps, months unaccounted for. I was right to be concerned. Trouble arrived with the sun 3 days later. I'd been checking the southern fence line when I spotted the dust cloud, riders moving fast. Too fast for casual travelers. I rode back to the ranch at a gallop, my mind racing ahead. Sarah was in the yard, hanging laundry. Her head snapped up at my approach, body tensing like a deer catching a predator's scent. Get the children, I said without preamble. Take them to the root cellar behind the house, now. To her credit, she didn't waste time with questions. She dropped the wet shirt she'd been hanging and ran for the house, calling for Emma and Noah. I dismounted and quickly led my horse into the barn, out of sight. Then I grabbed my Winchester from its scabbard and checked that it was loaded. It had been years since I'd pointed a gun at another human being. Not since the war. I stood on my porch, rifle held casually but visibly, as the riders approached. 3 of them. A tall man in an expensive-looking black coat riding a bay stallion, flanked by 2 rougher types on dust-colored geldings. They reined in about 20 yards from the house. The man in the black coat had a handsome face, I suppose, if you didn't mind the coldness in his eyes, pale blue, like ice over deep water. I'm looking for a woman and 2 children, he said, his voice cultured but impatient. My sister-in-law and her offspring, family matter. So this was James Blackwood. I'd imagined him differently, more obviously sinister. Haven't seen any women or children around these parts, I said evenly. Just me on this ranch. Blackwood's mouth tightened. That's strange, because we followed their trail quite clearly. I shrugged. Lots of tall men in the territory, and lots of women with children trying to start fresh. One of the hired guns spat into the dust. "Boss, we ain't got time for this. Let's just search the place." Blackwood raised a hand, silencing him without taking his eyes off me. I should introduce myself properly. James Blackwood, of Blackwood Shipping and Rail. Hope Montgomery. Mr. Montgomery, my brother's widow has taken something that belongs to me, something quite valuable. Must be mighty valuable for you to track her all this way. Search the place. Blackwood ordered his men. They started to dismount, but I raised my rifle, pointing it squarely at Blackwood's chest. This is private property, and you're trespassing. The men froze, hands hovering near their weapons. Blackwood looked more amused than concerned. "You'd risk your life for a woman you barely know?" he asked, genuinely curious. "She's nothing to you." "She's under my protection," I said simply. "That makes her something to me." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slightly, as if confirming something to himself. "I see. Well, Mr. Montgomery, I admire your principles, misguided though they may be." He gathered his reins. "We'll go for now. But I should warn you, Sarah Blackwood is not what she seems. She's dangerous, unstable. Ask her about the fire sometime." With that cryptic remark, he wheeled his horse around and rode away, his men following reluctantly. I kept the rifle raised until they were out of sight, then lowered it with a long exhale. Blackwood's parting words echoed in my mind. Ask her about the fire sometime. I walked to the root cellar and knocked gently. "Sarah, it's me." "They're gone." The doors opened slowly. Sarah emerged, blinking in the bright sunlight, a child clinging to each hand. "Was it him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. James Blackwood, and 2 hired guns. Her face went even paler. "What did he say?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "He said you took something valuable from him, and he mentioned a fire." Something flickered in her eyes, fear, guilt. I couldn't tell which. "We should leave," she said abruptly. "It's not safe for you if we stay." "Running didn't work before," I pointed out. "What makes you think it'll work now?" She looked away, her jaw tight. "You don't understand what he's capable of." "Then help me understand," I said gently. "What did you take from him, Sarah?" For a moment, I thought she might tell me. Then she shook her head. "Nothing that was his to begin with," she said, steel in her voice. "Whatever it is, he's not going to stop looking, and he knows you're in the area now. Which is why we need to go. Or," I countered, "you could trust me enough to tell me what we're really dealing with, so I can help." Sarah looked down at her children, then back at me. Something in her expression shifted, a decision being made. "Not here," she said quietly. "Tonight, after the children are asleep." I nodded, accepting this compromise. Tonight, then. But that night, as I sat on the porch waiting for Sarah to join me, I heard hoofbeats approaching, just one horse, moving at a steady walk. I picked up my rifle and stood, scanning the darkness. A lone rider emerged from the shadows, hands raised to show he was unarmed. "Mr. Montgomery?" he called. "Name's Eli Parker. Sheriff sent me from town." I kept the rifle ready. "What business does the sheriff have with me?" The rider came closer, stopping at the edge of the light spilling from the house. He was younger than I'd first thought, maybe 25, with an earnest face and a deputy's badge pinned to his vest. "There's been some trouble," he said. "Sheriff Davis was found dead this morning, shot in the back outside the saloon." I frowned. "That's unfortunate. But what's it got to do with me?" "Man named Blackwood is saying you did it. Says he saw you in town last night, arguing with the sheriff. Says you threatened him." I stared at the deputy, momentarily speechless. "That's a damn lie. I haven't left this ranch in days." Parker shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Sheriff Thompson, the new sheriff, he's forming a posse. Blackwood's offered a reward for your capture." I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. "Blackwood moves fast." "He's got influence," Parker said, lowering his voice. "Bought himself a judge and half the town council within a day of arriving." He glanced nervously over his shoulder. "Look, I don't know what's going on between you two, but Thompson's deputies are riding out at first light. You need to get gone." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Parker. "Because Davis was a good man, and whoever killed him deserves justice. Not a frame job." He gathered his reins. "I've never met this Blackwood before yesterday, but I know a snake when I see one." After Parker rode away, the door opened behind me. Sarah stepped onto the porch, her face pale in the moonlight. She'd heard everything. "This is my fault," she whispered. "He's going to destroy you to get to us." I shook my head. "Not if we don't let him." I turned to face her fully. "Sarah, I need to know what we're dealing with. What did you take from him that's worth killing for?" She looked at me for a long moment, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed it to me. "This," she said simply. I unfolded it carefully. It was a deed to a silver mine in Nevada territory. A valuable silver mine, judging by the details. "My husband's last act was to sign this over to me," Sarah explained, her voice urgent. "He knew what his brother was planning, to declare me unfit as a mother, take my children, and control their inheritance. This mine was part of my dowry, land that belonged to my father." "And the fire Blackwood mentioned?" Her eyes darkened. "James tried to force me to sign the mine over after Richard died. When I refused, he locked me in my room. That night, a fire started in the east wing, where the children slept." Her voice caught. "I broke out and got to them just in time. The next day, James told everyone I'd started the fire in a fit of madness." "So you ran," she nodded. "With just the clothes on our backs and that deed. It's all the children have left." I understood then what we were facing. Blackwood wouldn't stop until he had what he wanted, the mine, the children, and now revenge against me. "We need to leave," I said. "Tonight, pack only what you can carry." "Where will we go?" "North. I have a friend who runs a trading post near the Navajo reservation. We'll be safe there until we figure out our next move." Sarah nodded, already turning toward the door. "I'll wake the children." "Sarah," I called after her. She paused, looking back. "Thank you for trusting me with the truth." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You earned it, Hope Montgomery." Within the hour, we were riding away from the ranch I'd worked so hard to build, heading into the darkness with nothing but the stars to guide us and a killer's pursuit at our backs. The trading post sat in a shallow valley, surrounded by red rock formations that glowed like embers in the rising sun. We'd been riding all night, stopping only to rest the horses and let the children sleep briefly. Jacob Redhorse emerged as we approached, a Winchester cradled in his arms. He was half Navajo, half French-Canadian, with silver-streaked black hair worn in a long braid. We'd served together during the war, where he'd been a scout for the Union Army. His face broke into a smile when he recognized me. Hope Montgomery. I thought you were dead. Not for lack of trying, I responded with a weary smile. His dark eyes took in Sarah and the children, and his expression grew serious. Trouble? The worst kind, he nodded once. Get them inside. Jacob's wife, Anna, immediately took charge of the children. Settling them near the fire with food, Sarah sat with them, back straight, despite her exhaustion, eyes constantly checking windows and doors, the wariness of prey. I realized she'd been living with it so long it had become part of her. Jacob pulled me aside to his small office behind the trading counter. I explained everything, Sarah and the children, the deed, Blackwood's accusations, and Sheriff Davis's murder. This Blackwood, Jacob said when I'd finished. He sounds like a man accustomed to getting his way. He is, and he's got money and influence. Jacob nodded thoughtfully. Which means he'll have men searching every settlement between here and the border. He took a sip of coffee. But not the reservation. Most white men won't go there willingly. You think the Navajo would shelter us? My wife's brother is a headman. If I ask, he will consider it. Jacob gave me a measured look. But once you enter their protection, you play by their rules, their justice. At this point, I trust their justice more than what passes for it in Gila Bend. I returned to the main room, where Sarah sat with her now sleeping children. She looked up as I approached. Your friend, she said quietly. Can he be trusted? With our lives, I assured her. He's going to arrange shelter for us with the Navajo. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. The Indians? Is that safe? Safer than anywhere Blackwood can reach easily, I pointed out. And it's temporary. Just until we can figure out our next move. She looked down at her sleeping children, then back at me. What is our next move? Hope. We can't run forever. I sat beside her, suddenly aware of the bone-deep weariness in my own body. No, we can't. I agreed. Blackwood's power has limits. It may reach into Arizona, but it won't extend to every territory. So we keep running? California? Oregon? There was an edge of desperation in her voice. No, I said firmly. Running just postpones the reckoning. We need to find a way to fight back. How? He's rich, connected. He's already convinced a town I've never even visited that I'm insane and you're a murderer. I rubbed my jaw, thinking. The deed is legally yours? She nodded. Yes, properly signed and witnessed before a judge in Topeka. Then there must be records, people who remember the transaction. Your husband's doctor, who attended him at the end. Sarah's expression shifted as she followed my thinking. You want to clear our names? Prove Blackwood is lying. It's the only way we'll ever stop running, I said. But first, we need to get to safety. She looked at me for a long moment, then reached out hesitantly and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was rough from work and weather, but her touch was gentle. Why are you doing all this? She asked. You've lost your ranch, your reputation. You're risking your life. For strangers. I turned my hand over, so our palms met. You're not strangers anymore, I said simply. Something shifted in her eyes, a softening, a recognition. But before she could respond, the door to the trading post burst open. Jacob rushed in, his rifle in hand. Riders, he said tersely. Coming fast from the south. 6, maybe 7. I was on my feet instantly. Blackwood? Can't tell yet. But they're pushing their horses hard. Sarah had gone pale, her arms automatically reaching for her children. How did they find us so quickly? "Jacob, is there somewhere we can hide?" I asked, already moving. He nodded. "Root cellar, under the storeroom." I grabbed my rifle and moved to the window, watching the approaching dust cloud. As the riders came into view, I felt a surge of surprise. They weren't Blackwood's men, but U.S. Marshals. Led by a weathered man I recognized as Marshal Frank Dawson. "It's Dawson," I told Jacob. "U.S. Marshal out of Prescott." Jacob lowered his rifle slightly. "You know him?" "By reputation. He's said to be incorruptible." I stepped onto the porch as the marshals approached. Dawson reined in, studying me carefully. "Hope Montgomery?" he asked. I nodded. "That's me. Frank Dawson, U.S. Marshal." He dismounted, keeping his movements deliberate. "Got some information about Sheriff Davis's murder that you might find interesting." "What kind of information?" "The kind that suggests you weren't anywhere near Gila Bend when it happened." Dawson removed his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. "Got an anonymous tip pointing to a man named Blackwood. Seems he's been trying to claim you killed Davis, but several witnesses saw him near the sheriff's office that night." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Who sent the tip?" "Young deputy named Parker. Said things didn't add up." Jacob's Navajo brother-in-law, Chief Hosteen So, arrived shortly after. Tall and dignified, with obsidian eyes that seemed to look through rather than at a person. He observed Sarah and her children carefully before speaking. "Those who harm children have no place among honorable people," he said, the judgment clear in his voice. "My people will shelter them while justice finds its path." Dawson examined the deed Sarah reluctantly showed him. "This appears legitimate," he said, "and it gives Blackwood clear motive." Together, we formed a plan. The deed would serve as bait to lure Blackwood into revealing his true nature. Sarah would return to Gila Bend with me and Dawson, while the children remained safely with the Navajo. As we prepared to leave, Chief So offered me parting wisdom. "A man who defends those who cannot defend themselves walks with honor, even into danger." Sarah, cleaned up and determined, no longer looked like a woman in flight, but one turning to fight. "Are you certain about this?" I asked her privately. Her response was resolute. "I've been running for 6 months. It's time to stand." Hope and Sarah rode slowly into Gila Bend. Deliberately visible, townspeople stared, whispered, some with hostile glances. Blackwood's men were strategically positioned throughout the town, watching their arrival with predatory interest. "Dawson's men are in position," Hope whispered, as he helped Sarah dismount outside the saloon, "just like we planned." They entered the crowded establishment, conversation dying as people noticed them. James Blackwood sat at a corner table with several town officials, his momentary shock quickly masked by a practiced smile. "Sarah, my dear," he called, his voice carrying across the room. "I've been so worried, and Mr. Montgomery, the authorities have been looking for you." "Funny coincidence," Hope replied loudly. "We've been looking for the authorities too." Blackwood's smile tightened. "Sheriff Thompson will be pleased to find you." Marshal Dawson chose that moment to enter, his badge gleaming. "Sheriff Thompson has been temporarily relieved of his duties pending investigation." The saloon went silent as Dawson identified himself. "I have witness testimonies placing Mr. Blackwood at the scene of Sheriff Davis's murder," he announced. "I also have telegrams from Kansas confirming Mrs. Blackwood's account of her deed's legal transfer." Blackwood's facade began to crack. "This is absurd. These people are clearly conspiring against me. We've also located 3 witnesses to a conversation between you and Sheriff Davis," Dawson continued, "where you offered him money to arrest Montgomery on false charges." Blackwood's composure shattered. He lunged for a hidden pistol, causing people to dive for cover. As he aimed at Hope, a shot rang out from Deputy Parker at the bar, wounding Blackwood's arm. His pistol clattered to the floor. "Couldn't let him kill an innocent man," Parker explained simply. Dawson formally arrested Blackwood for the murder of Sheriff Davis and attempted murder of Hope. As he was led away, Blackwood hurled threats about his connections and influence. "I know exactly who you are," Dawson responded coolly. "A murderer who's finally run out of places to hide." When Blackwood passed Sarah, she stood tall, meeting his gaze. "You'll never touch my children," she said quietly. Several days later, Hope and Sarah stood on the boardwalk outside the town's small hotel. Marshal Dawson approached with good news. Blackwood was being transferred to territorial prison, and Sarah's ownership of the Nevada mine was legally confirmed. "I'm going to sell it," Sarah decided. "The children and I don't need a silver mine. We need a home." Hope felt a moment of uncertainty. "Where will you go now?" Before she could answer, Emma and Noah ran toward them, returned from the reservation. Chief Zoe and Jacob watched from a distance as the family reunited. That evening, with the children asleep, Hope and Sarah talked quietly by the window. "Will you go back east?" Hope asked hesitantly. Sarah shook her head. "There's nothing for us there but bad memories." Hope gathered his courage. "I was thinking, with what I got from selling my ranch and what you'll get for the mine, we could buy a bigger spread, good water, room for cattle, a proper house." "We?" Sarah asked carefully. "Not because you need protection, but because I love you," Hope said, "because Emma and Noah have become as dear to me as if they were my own, because you're the bravest woman I've ever known." Tears glistened in Sarah's eyes. "You're asking me to marry you, properly this time." Hope smiled. "No Shackles, no sheriff, just us." "Yes," she whispered, moving into his arms. 1 year later, their new ranch in northern Arizona thrived. Emma read to Noah on the porch, while Sarah, visibly pregnant, hung laundry. Hope watched his family from the corral, marveling at the journey that had brought them together. Jacob and Anna Redhorse arrived for a visit, bringing gifts from Chief Sos. That evening, Hope and Sarah sat on the porch after dark, watching the stars. "I never thought I'd feel safe again," Sarah said softly. "You are," Hope assured her. "You always will be." Her hand found his in the darkness. "I would marry you 100 times over. You're mine now," Hope responded, echoing his first declaration, but transformed by love. "And I am yours." They had built something stronger than ownership, a family forged in fire, tempered by trust, and bound by a love that had survived the worst of humanity to find the best in the harshest landscapes of our lives, where desperation and cruelty seem to rule. It is often a single act of courage that changes everything. When someone stands firm against injustice, even at great personal cost, the impossible becomes possible. The shackles we wear, whether physical chains or the invisible bonds of fear and trauma, can be broken not just by our own strength, but through the unexpected kindness of those who see our worth when the world sees only our wounds. True freedom comes not from escape, but from finally being seen for who we truly are. And true love is never about possession, but protection, not ownership, but partnership in the face of whatever storms may come. Even in a world where power and money attempt to bend justice to their will, the human spirit's capacity for resilience, for trust after betrayal, for building family from the fragments of broken dreams, remains our most profound strength. The wilderness may be unforgiving. But within it, we can still build sanctuaries of compassion where healing begins. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe and follow our channel for more tales that remind us of our shared humanity and the courage that lives in all of us.